ladies and gentlemen. I want you to imagine the world going back 10,000 years. Humanity lived in small tribes, maybe 100 people, very community-oriented. The women would take care of the children and spend the rest of the day bending over, gathering berries and nuts, while the men were out throwing spears and hunting and gathering the meat from wild beasts that were always dangerous, and then they had to haul them all the way back to the camp where everybody was safe. And during this time, there were a lot of dangers. You know, there were lions and tigers, and if you went to school in Alabama, even dinosaurs. People had to worry about. So you had to be strong and fast just to survive through these times. And that was the time that evolved, where our DNA is a product of that evolution. And it really hasn't changed very much today, and only 10,000 years is just a blip of time in evolutionary history. And that's really what we're made of still. That's what we came from. And so you wouldn't really know that if you went to maybe a modern gym where you see all these silly contraptions that are designed to just do, you know, one piddling little movement or something at a time, instead of, you know, having to pick up a wild boar and put it over your shoulder, or maybe a potential mate, and carry it back to the important place where it had to end up. And so after seeing, so this is where CrossFit comes in. So CrossFit, the founder, a guy in Santa Cruz, Greg Glassman, after seeing all these, you know, fitness fads and Thighmaster and silly things like that, said, you know, this whole industry is just designed to sell more junk to people. Let's go back to basics. Let's go to our evolutionary history, the thing that made us who we are as animals, and design a strength and conditioning program around that so we can be really functional as opposed to some contrived notion that a lot of the fitness industry is built around. And so CrossFit combines functional movements that are done in a constantly varying, constantly changing way at high intensity, but for a relatively short amount of time. And he founded it in 2000. It was the first gym in Santa Cruz. By 2005, they were up to 13 gyms. And 3 weeks ago, I believe, they were on 60 Minutes doing a big special on this, and now they're up to 10,000 gyms. Whoa. So it's the fastest growing gym of really any kind. And the workouts are done in a pretty simple gym called a box, affectionately, that probably has 1/10 of the kind of equipment that a typical gym with all the flashy equipment has. They're done, and it's a 1-hour session always, where they're done as a group. They start with a warm-up, then there's usually a skill building depending on what you're doing. It combines free weights, gymnastics, and then some kind of a run or an aerobic component, so very mimicking nature where humans came from. And then there's a cool down stretching at the end. So it's also built around a community, so everybody's very supportive. There's competition within it, but then mostly within yourself. So that's the idea. So who can do CrossFit? So Navy SEALs have built their training program in a very similar way to CrossFit. So that's sort of the most intense way. But in a class I'm in, there's a 70-year-old guy who can maybe lift 30 pounds, and he's still doing it too. So the workouts are all designed to be very scalable. So you can be really heavy weights, and you can have a guy lifting 300 pounds next to somebody who's just doing maybe 10. And they're all very supportive in the environment. So there's, I remember actually in college, a friend of mine was into this like 10 years ago. And it was really fringe then, it was very, very culty. But now there's 10,000 gyms, there's 3 just in Sausalito actually. So anybody can do it, you can find one anywhere near you. So what are the benefits and some of the risks of CrossFit, like any workout program? Well, one for me, I hadn't been to a gym for 10 years, and this New Year's had maybe something of a binge that pushed me to say, okay, really, New Year's resolution, for real this time. And I said, okay, I'm going to go sign up for this. I know I always hear good things. And I signed up for it in Sausalito, and I just go 2 days a week, so it's 2 hours a week in total that I spend there. And it's totally changed. I hadn't been to the gym for 10 years. I'm a pretty fit guy riding my bike, but totally changed all the other stuff. I've lost quite a bit of fat and put on muscle in areas where I hadn't worked out for a long time. And you just feel better. It's just because of this natural way that it mimics how your body is designed. It really is meant to make you functionally better through your life, whether it's moving things around the house or competing in an athletic event. So really, the benefits are great. There's been studies, so the science is new because it's a recent phenomenon, but 2010 US Army study on already fit people found they improved their strength 20% after only 6 weeks of training program. An Ohio State program study found that people increase their VO2 max and decrease their body weight, so there's been proof that it works, and in a very short amount of time too. So there's been some risks too. There was a big lawsuit actually 3 years ago where an unlicensed CrossFit trainer pushed somebody so hard that they got something called rhabdomyolysis. And what that is literally pushing your muscle to the point where it explodes. And it's a very, very rare phenomenon. And this woman made a lawsuit and it became a thing in the New York Times. And actually CrossFit, to raise awareness around this issue, to make people not push themselves until they explode, made a t-shirt that had one of those balloon clown things for a kid's birthday party that was kind of deflating, and it was on a dialysis machine, and it was saying, Uncle Rhabdo is here. So but there's been subsequent scientific studies that show that it's no more dangerous than any other kind of exercise program. And of course, it's all about technique, so you don't show up on your first day and try to lift the super heaviest weight. That's just like you wouldn't ride a bike with your eyes closed. Common sense stuff. So to conclude, CrossFit is a new, really fast-growing phenomenon that's got 10,000 gyms. It's no more expensive than a regular gym, but mimics really where our bodies came from through evolution. It doesn't take a lot of time. I do it 2 hours a week, twice a week for 1 hour. And it's a really great community feeling. It's much more like playing a game rather than the drudgery of going to the gym. So if you don't like going to the gym, I encourage you to try it for maybe a month and see how you like it. So that's my speech.